A very good evening and welcome to a Data with Dinner Set, program 280 here on November the 30th, the last day of November, indeed the last day of autumn before we start meteorological winter on the 1st of December. I hope this finds you well. Hopefully we have sorted out, well, we've found a fix at least to the sound gremlins that plagued us a little bit last Sunday. I'm so sorry about that, and hopefully you can hear me now clearly without distortion. That is the main thing. You will have worked out by now that we are not live. In case you were not here on last week's programme, you may have missed the fact that I can't be with you live this evening as I am playing in St Andrew's Church in Surbiton for their Advent Carol service. So whenever I have an engagement elsewhere, we do the next best thing, which is to record live. That is to say that the same love and prep goes into the programme as always. I press the record button and off we go for 45 minutes warts and all. The only thing missing is the most important thing, and that is to say my live audience. It's always such good fun to banter away with you and talk absolute nonsense in the chat room. So I just have to imagine the sorts of things that you are saying in my head and fill in the gaps accordingly. But as I say, I hope this does find you well and you've had a good week. As we reach the end of another month, doesn't time fly? So our opening music, I know by now you will have typed it in. We know it, do we not, as the famous music to the 1978 TV series Grange Hill. There they are, Tucker, Alan and Benny. Poor Benny passed away a few years ago, actually. But of course, Tucker, Todd Conti, still very much around as an actor. That bit of music then, that groovy bit of music, was composed by this guy, Alan HAWKSHAW. And he's a happy chappy, isn't he? Mind you, I think I'd be happy with all that equipment around. He composed for the KPM and other music libraries for over 20 years. He composed also the music to Countdown, Channel 4 News, a piece of library music which was used for the Dave Allen Show, and that bit of music which was used for Grange Hill, which is actually called Chicken Man. Chicken Man. It was actually composed and recorded in 1971. And Alan says that he composed that in less than an hour. He said, I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, I just wanted it to sound a bit groovy and funky. And that's what came out. And we know it, of course, famously as Grange Hill. And you will, of course, I think if you're a certain of age, remember those iconic comic strip type titles that accompanied that music. It was a great show, wasn't it? And some really relevant and gripping storylines that went on. So here's another interesting factoid about that piece, which we will now call Chicken Man, because it was a piece of library music. At the same time that Grange Hill was on, the first series of Give Us a Clue, with Una and Michael and Lionel, used the same music. Now, isn't that bizarre? For about 2 years, the same bit of music was being used on Give Us a Clue as it was on Grange Hill. That's quite an unusual thing to happen, I think. Anyway, that was our opening bit of music, and that came as a request. You may recall I asked for a number of requests. You know, if there's any opening music that you want me to use, I've still got quite a long list, but if you want to request something, then do. And that was a request from one of our very regular viewers. So Chicken Man by Alan HAWKSHAW was our opening music this evening. So as usual, we've got our eclectic mix of 6 pieces this evening, some very familiar pieces amongst them, and maybe a few not quite so familiar, but I hope all equally enjoyable, all a bit different. And as always, I will furnish you with some information about the piece and the composer in between each piece. But if you are watching this and involved in the chat room, and do chat away in your nice friendly way to each other and discuss what you're listening, because I always love reading the chat when I come back, and you never know, because of the magic of television and indeed the brevity sometimes of an Advent Carol series, I may join you towards the end. You never know. So I'm going to have a sip of coffee, and then we will actually launch into our first piece. Launch is probably appropriate, actually, when you hear what it is. Do enjoy. I think some of you will have been typing in what that was. I love that bit of music. It is just so groovy and of its time. It was the theme music composed for the 1970 Jerry and Sylvia Anderson series U.F.O, which ran for 26 episodes. And it was their first live action production after all things like Stingray, Thunderbirds, Fireball XL5, Captain Scarlet, etc. The music was absolutely fantastic. It was a bit of an odd program, and music composed by the wonderful Mr. Barry Gray, such a clever, erudite musician who adapted all the scores that he wrote for Jerry and Sylvia Anderson just in right way. He had a military background. He was also trained, first of all, as a chorister in Blackburn Cathedral, and then at the Royal Manchester College of Music. He studied composition with Matthias Scheiber, amongst other people. A very clever composer, arranger, conductor, keyboard player, and Martineau player, organist, etc. And his scores and all the Let's call them the stings and all the background music for all those Jerry and Sylvia Anderson productions. Quite astounding. So U.F.O, yeah, a bit of an odd program. The purple wigs and the blonde and platinum wigs and the very bizarre outfits, and indeed some quite adult themes going on. They're quite dark in places. I don't think the channels quite knew where to put it in the schedules, because some things appeal to children, and other things perhaps, well, they may have appealed, but they may not have been always suitable for that audience. Anyway, we haven't had that one for a bit. That was the theme music to U.F.O by Barry Gray from 1970. As always, if you like what you see and you hear on A Date with a Dinner Set, and indeed this channel, YouTube Gigi the Piano Man, do press the thumbs up button. Make sure you press the button on the left, please, so that it will illuminate and dance for you, and that will help the algorithm and indeed our channel. So I hope you enjoyed our opening bit of music this evening. If you've just joined us, I'm sorry we are not live. I am playing the organ in Surbiton for an Advent Carol service, and so we're doing the next best thing, which is recording live, warts and all. That also means if we are live, that I do what I normally do at this point, which is have another sip of coffee before our next bit of music. Do enjoy. Again, a great bit of music, a great bit of film music, and I feel sure that you identified that it was indeed a James Bond theme, and it was the theme to For Your Eyes Only from 1981. For Your Eyes Only, that's the one with the yellow De Cheveux Citroen in it, the Polaris submarine. What else happens in that? Oh, he blows up a Lotus. Oh, yeah, the Hilltop Monastery scene at the end. Oh, and Top Hole was in it as well. Yeah, For Your Eyes Only, and that a very lovely song, as sung by Sheena Easton, became quite a hit for her. The title song, and indeed the whole soundtrack, was not composed by John Barry. John Barry was not available, and I believe it's something to do with the tax rates at the time and residing in Switzerland at the point. I believe. I don't know. It was composed by Bill Conti, he who composed the music for all the Rocky films, amongst many other things. A very great composer, very much a sort of funky disco type of composer, and his soundtrack to For Your Eyes Only indeed had those disco funk elements, which didn't appeal to everyone, but it seemed to suit the action, actually, and seemed to ground it a little bit. Anyway, that's what was. It was For Your Eyes Only from 1981 by Bill Conti. So I hope you enjoyed that last second bit of music. If you're new to this, and you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the channel. YouTube Gigi the Piano Man is YouTube, so it's free to do so. Do like what you see and perhaps make a comment and share. I have something like 670 videos on I know, pure greed, on my channel in various categories, various genres, if you like, of music. So you can always take your pick and perhaps find something you'd like to listen to, and do leave me a comment. It really is lovely to read comments back. Okay, more coffee, and then on to another old favourite. So I think, again, a lot of you will have been, sorry, breathe. A lot of you will have been typing in that was one of the pieces by the very wonderful Mr. Russ Conway, as indeed it was. And that one was from 1959. It was number one in the UK for 4 weeks. It was Side Saddle. Side Saddle. So if you look at the record, you'll see it says underneath it Stanford. So Russ Conway's real name was Trevor Stanford, and he composed that piece under his real name. In a space of about 5 years, Russ Conway had some 20 top 20 hits in the UK. He was incredibly prolific and popular. Well, he still is. And he had 2 number ones at that time. That one, Side Saddle, and a few years later, Roulette, which we've also played before. On the channel, Russ Conway taught himself to play the piano whilst he was in Borstal for a very minor crime. He then went into the Merchant Navy, and he was actually decorated with a Distinguished Medal during the war. He also, at that point, lost the tip of one of his fingers on a bread slicer. But it didn't deter him, and he was playing in a London club when he was talent spotted in 1955 and then had that very successful career. He didn't enjoy good health all his life. He suffered from stomach ulcers, nervous breakdown, all sorts of things. And a stroke. He was a very heavy smoker, some 80 cigarettes a day, and a very heavy drinker. But luckily he recovered from his stroke and extremely popular again, if you like, a second win towards the end of his life. So that was Side Saddle from 1959 by the very wonderful Mr. Russ Conway. We've got a few notes sticking on the piano, which doesn't help, particularly if it's a G and you're playing in G major, which is partly why we morphed into E-flat major. Actually, E-flat major was the key in which Russ played Side Saddle. So there we go. But it does bring me back round to the fact that the piano does need tuning. My piano tuner is this week providing me with some dates that he might be able to come around and tune the piano. He's very busy. And if his diary fits in with mine, that'll be wonderful, because it is getting quite fruity. And if you want to make a contribution towards that, please do. We had a very generous donation the other week, which is in the pot, ready to pay my wonderful piano tuner. So as always, there is a link in the stream description, if you like, the video description below. It is www.paypal.me/GG the Piano Man, and you don't have to have a PayPal account for that. You can use any card if you so wish. As I say, I hope we can get the piano tuned before Christmas, because it's starting to be, well, quite irritating actually. Although oddly quite suitable for the type of music obviously we've just been playing there with Side Saddle. Okay, here comes a golden oldie. We haven't had this one for a bit. Again, I'd say you'd recognise it straight away, but you might need to wait until the chorus, because I like to play the verses of particularly these older songs when I can, because they're so often missed out in films and productions and things. And, you know, I feel a bit sorry for the composers and indeed the singers who recorded them if the verse gets missed out. And quite often they're really nice, leading us into perhaps the more well-known chorus. So we'll finish the coffee and then we'll move into this next piece. Yes, again, I know you will have typed in, just letting that little montage finish. Yeah, I know you will have typed in that as soon as we got to the chorus. Such a well-known song of nostalgia, We'll Meet Again, of course, which was composed in 1939. In 1939 it was composed by this chap, Ross Parker, who was a pianist and indeed a scriptwriter, songwriter. He composed also things including They'll Always Be in England. And looking at the photo on the left, it does look like that he won the competition for best Oliver Hardy lookalike. I might be making that bit up. But a very, very clever chap, a very happy chappy, shall we say. That song, We'll Meet Again, of course, as made famous by the Force's sweetheart, Vera Lynn, who, as I'm sure we know, lived a grand old life to, I was going to say about 130, I don't think I mean that. 103 she was, wasn't she, when she passed away back in 2020, I believe, and she made that song her very own, and it became the theme, didn't it? The theme of hope throughout certainly the Second World War, and then of course it's been sort of revived, hasn't it, on all occasions when we need to be thinking about service men and women and the effects of war. It's become one of those songs that sort of gathers everyone together. Now look, here's an interesting thing. I always find it interesting the middle eight of We'll Meet Again, I always think sounds a bit like Winnie the Pooh, or rather Winnie the Pooh sounds like that. And in Side Saddle, the main theme of Side Saddle is actually very similar, and there's a good reason for this, to English Country Gardens. It's all the same sort of style. In fact, Russ Conway said he wrote that in the English gavotte style, so that's the similarity there. And if we hadn't had all those sound problems last week, I meant to draw a similar comparison. You might remember we played How Insensitive by Antonio Carlos Jobim. Which is, I think it might be fairly well known, this one, is loosely based on Chopin's Prelude in E minor. And you can hear it if you put the two side by side, in fact even on top of each other. You can sort of see how all these things work. I find that all those sorts of things really fascinating. Maybe when it's a little less busy, we'll put together a program of sort of fascinating things that link like that. You may remember we did one back in the summer based on musical intervals. And I know some people find these musicological, theoretical, gosh, that was a sentence, aspects relatively interesting. So we might indeed do that. Now, look, the upload that went up on Friday the 28th, was the final Frank Loeesser upload, and for the last one I decided to borrow from his very famous musical Guys and Dolls and do the groovy, swinging, finger clicking, dice throwing, sit down, you're rocking the boat from Guys and Dolls. So that is there on the channel, and indeed beneath this video you will find a direct link that will take you there. And it's just a very simple piano cover of that follows the outline of a song. But it's a great bit of music, a very famous song, and it seemed a fitting way to end the month of Frank Loeesser piano covers before we go into December, and who knows what we're going to do for the uploads in December. Well, I know it's going to be quite a variety. Some seasonal things, as indeed you would expect when it's seasonal. I'll have a sip of water before our next very famous bit of music. I know you'll have typed it from My Fair Lady, of course, on the street where you live. My Fair Lady, as we all know, based on Pygmalion, and My Fair Lady from 1956, the wonderful Broadway show starring Rex Harrison and Julie Andrews, which then came to the West End, again starring Rex and Julie. Was later made into a film in 1964, I believe, but as you will see from the picture, in one of the most odd situations in Hollywood, Julie Andrews was not cast because they wanted, Jack Warner wanted Audrey Hepburn. She looked very nice and could act, and she couldn't sing, so she had to be dubbed. But never mind, because Julie Andrews went on to bigger and better things with Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. My Fair Lady, of course, the score composed by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Loewe. They are in their clashing green colourised jackets. I do like that photo. They were a great partnership, and My Fair Lady was the third of their shows after Brigadoon and Paint Your Wagon, and then they did My Fair Lady and then Camelot. Those were the four famous shows that those two people did. So November the 30th, I'm sorry we're not live. As I say, it's Advent Sunday, so as we all get ready for Christmas in every way, sacred and secular, that's where I am playing the organ for a service there. But additionally, here on November the 30th, it's National Moose Day. Oh dear, wrong moose. National Moose Day. November the 30th, yes. We do love our friends across the pond, don't we? Because they, bless them, they do manage to find something to celebrate every day. And that's very useful for a magazine type of programme like this that likes to put these little irrelevant tidbits in between the music. National Moose Day, so in French, literally meaning airy and frothy. So obviously chocolate mousse pictured there. I'm not a sweet mousse fan anymore, but a well-made savoury mousse would be okay, I think, actually. I think it depends how it's made, and as with all things, if you use the right ingredients, quality ingredients, blah, 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 you tend to get the better results, he said, preaching. But there we go. National Moose Day. You heard it here, November the 30th. Now look, we're reaching the end of our programme. As I say, I'm sorry we are not live, but we are recording live, warts and all, and my clock tells me that it's time to launch into our final bit of music, which is not new to the channel, but it is new to A Date with a Dinner Set. You may not know its title, but I hope you will be foot tapping, finger clicking, and whatever else you're wanting to do along to this lovely bit of music. Then we'll say a little bit more about it before we say goodnight in our usual way. Do enjoy. have got the composer, or indeed the title, or both. It was composed by the wonderful Mr. Henry Mancini. And the title of the piece, it was from 1962, by the way, was FLUTER'S Ball. And it was written for flute quartet. And it was composed for the 1962 Blake Edwards film Experiment in Terror. It's a lovely bit of music. It just trips along at just the right Mancini type of tempo, a really lovely groove to it. And if you've not heard it in its original with the flute quartet, it's well worth seeking out. It's such an earworm, and I think you'll enjoy it. So I hope you have enjoyed our program today. As I say, I'm sorry we've not been live, but I hope you will have found something new perhaps on the program, and at least a couple of things that you've known and enjoyed as well. We will be back truly live as normal, or as normal as is possible for a date with a dinner set, on Sunday the 7th of December. Yes, we will be in December then. And indeed, yes, we've only 25 days till Christmas. Wow. Amazing. Do take very good care of yourselves. Thanks so very much for listening and commenting. And we look forward to playing for you again next Sunday. All the very best. Thank you and good night.